everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today we're continuing with how the Redheads built the pyramids, part 7, continuing with chapter 2 of Irish Wisdom Preserved in Bible and Pyramids by CONOR MACDARI, a wonderful book by a very eccentric man who clearly did a lot of research into history. So here we go, chapter 2, An Elucidation of History. In ancient times, the ruler of the state, according to the extent of his power, dependent as to whether he was an overlord king, having subject kings as vassals, or being a subject king himself, held two offices jointly in his own person, that of king or emperor, and that of head of the church in his dominion. The fact of his holding such autocratic power led to the assumption of attributes of divinity in order to hold the people in awe of him. The qualities of divinity we have seen attributed to rulers in our day. In Russia, China, Japan, and not so long ago in England, the belief was held that any disease which would not yield to the treatment of a physician could be cured by the mere touch of the king's hand or even of his garment. The head of the Irish state church held this supreme pontifical power in Europe until challenged first by Persia, then by Greece, and later by Rome, who, when a favorable time arrived for her to assert her independence, set up jointly a church and state for herself. For, let it be known, Rome was at one time a colony of Ireland. The name Rome is a compound of two Irish words, ro meaning before, and om meaning body, earth, or grave. But in its mythic meaning it is made to signify before heaven, ro, and earth, orm, the two together meaning heaven and earth, hence the eternal city, Rome. The river of Rome, the Tiber, also bears an Irish name. It derives its name from tubber, the Irish word for a well or spring of water. Hence the Tiber is the spring water river. As the poet Longfellow truly says, "Their names are on your waters, and ye may not wash them out." The fact is that Ireland was the first power that colonized along both sides of the Mediterranean Sea, and therefore the colonies came from the west instead of from the east, as our astute Roman and British historians would have us believe. And the world has believed it up to now. But the deception, when once exposed, is too clear for anyone to be deceived by it. Investigators have followed the false clues sent out from this source and found nothing in the East to support this claim that the Aryans emigrated from the East and colonized towards the West. The real and true evidence points just in the opposite direction. The American Encyclopedia Art Ethnology, quoted in Donnelly's Atlantis, says, Bonfrey, L. Geiger, and other students of the ancient Indo-European languages have recently advanced the opinion that the original home of Indo-European races must be sought in Europe, because their stock of words is rich in the names of plants and animals, and contains names of seasons that are not found in tropical countries or anywhere else in Asia. Mueller says, the nations who are comprehended under the common appellation of Indo-European, the Hindus, the Persians, the Celts, Germans, Romans, Greeks, and Slavs, do not only share the same words and the same grammar, slightly modified in each country, but they seem to have likewise preserved a mass of popular traditions which had grown up before they left their common home. Donnelly's Atlantis, page 458. To obscure knowledge of this homeland and the reason for doing so have engaged the greatest organized propaganda for spreading misinformation that we have any knowledge of, as will become apparent in these pages. We are told that the Phoenicians planted these colonies and that they came from the east, from the coasts of what is now Syria or Phoenicia, as they say it was formerly called. Ireland is the homeland of the Phoenicians, which word is a secret name for the insular race of mariners and traders who carried on commerce with the whole world. Sidon and Tyre are mythic names applied for purpose of deception to the two cities at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. Sidon is an Irish word and means the hips or buttocks. Tyre means the earth or body, and the purple color or dye which, we are told, made this city famous is the blood which courses through the body. The coast of Syria was never suited to the needs of a seafaring race. Such a race never developed there. But Ireland, an island indented with bays, lofts, and harbors, was suitable to the development of just such a race as we would expect to find there. For secret reasons, the name Phoenicians was applied to the Irish race. It is written purposely in this form of spelling, which has served well in throwing people off the track and helped very well in keeping up the deception. For if they had written the word in its plain form of Phoenician, F-I-N-I-C-I-A-N, there would be too many who were liable to see the true meaning of it and, thereby, get a clue to the real truth which was meant to be concealed. The word Phaon or Finn is an Irish name of the sun, and the Phoenicians were the Irish sun worshippers or the Magian priests of Iessa, the Irish sun god, who brought their civilization and arts, already developed in Ireland, with them to Egypt. There they erected their monumental altars to the god of the sun, of which the Great Pyramid was the crowning symbol and masterpiece. They carried their mission from there to the farther lands of the east. Plain documentary evidence of the ordinary kind to prove these facts has been destroyed, but in their stead a secret system was adapted to preserve them, or rather, to conceal them from profane eyes, so that the facts can be attested to and proved in the most convincing manner by the aid of the covert or hidden allusions and by the secret code intended solely for the benefit of the anointed few, the priesthood. But those monuments which they left behind, although now in ruins from Vandal hands, speak most eloquently for them. They testify in most emphatic and convincing manner as to who their authors were. Their testimony is most pronounced and unimpeachable and puts to flight all false witnesses. The Great Pyramid of Iessa, the Bible, and the Irish language, through means of these aids we have been able to reveal the truth which had been buried beneath a mass of myth and fiction by the priests of Rome and their British collaborators. Honest and, we believe, impartial investigators have confessed themselves at a loss to account for the origin of Egypt's civilization with its arts and sciences. It did not seem like other things. There was such silence about it and a mysterious absence of facts regarding its birth which was most puzzling. It did not appear to grow from small beginnings and gradually advance to a better and more perfect state by successive stages. It seemed as if it was so from the beginning. No trace of early beginnings could be found by investigators. Now, these are not the natural or usual features of a civilization which is native to any country or society. Such a civilization as Egypt could not be developed suddenly and come into being at once any more than an oak tree could spring from the acorn full grown, or that a great city could be naturally developed with all its varied institutions and arise in a single day. Many writers have noted this peculiarity about Egypt's history and her civilization, without happening onto the key which would solve the puzzle. As they were not aware of the existence of a plot to conceal her history, they were not suspicious enough of the priests who wrote her history, as they would have us see it. Renan says of Egypt, "It has no archaic epoch." Donnelly says, "The carpenters and masons of the ancient Egyptians were almost identical with those used among us today." Taylor says, in Anthropology, page 192, "Among the ancient cultured nations of Egypt and Assyria, handicrafts had already come to a stage which could only have been reached by thousands of years of progress. In museums still may be examined the works of their joiners, stonecutters, goldsmiths, wonderful in skill and finish, and often putting to shame the modern artificer." Osborne says, "It bursts upon us at once in the flower of its highest perfection." Dr. Sayes says, in A Miracle in Stone, page 40, "It suddenly takes its place in the world in all its matchless magnificence, without father, without mother, and as clean apart from all evolution as if it had dropped from the unknown heavens." We have already stated where it came from, Ireland, and its master adepts. Reginald Stuart Poole says, in Contemporary Review, August 1881, page 43, quoted by Donnelly, "When we consider the high ideal of the Egyptians, as proved by their portrayals of a just life, the principles they laid down as the basis of ethics, the elevation of women among them, their humanity in war, we must admit that their normal place ranks very high among the nations of antiquity." They were just such a people as we would expect to find associated with and benignantly ruled by a pure and virtuous priesthood such as the Irish Magian priesthood undoubtedly was, else its priests would not have been chosen to be the instructors and elder brothers of the infant and backward races of that early day. Rawlinson, in Origin of Nations, page 13, says, "Now, in Egypt it is notorious that there is no indication of any early period of savagery or barbarism. All the authorities show that, however far back we go, we find in Egypt no rude or uncivilized time out of which civilization is developed. We see no barbarous customs, not even the habit, slowly abandoned by all people, of wearing arms when not on military service. By their fruits ye shall know them." Goodrich says, "Great and splendid as are the things which we know about oldest Egypt, she is made 1,000 times more sublime by our uncertainty as to the limits of her accomplishments. The effect of research seems to be to prove the objects of it to be much older than we thought them to be. some things thought to be wholly modern having been proved to be repetitions of things Egyptian, and other things known to have been Egyptian being, by every advance in knowledge, carried back more and more toward the beginning of things. She shakes our most rooted ideas concerning the world's history. She has not ceased to be a puzzle and a lure. There is a spell over her still. A lure she most certainly is, for her monumental ruins are most interesting, and, once we have the key to the mystery of her past, most enlightening and inspiring. But her spell of mysterious silence is now over, and her puzzle is explained in these pages for the first time, and, now that we have shown the way, the task will be taken up and brought to completion by more able men. So, the generally accepted history of ancient times, such as is found on the shelves of our libraries and taught in our schools, is mostly fiction, made up of fables and myths cleverly composed into history so nicely as to lull all suspicion in the mind of the reader and student as to the fraudulent character of it. Some wonderfully clever writers have been led astray by those deceptions of history. That this is a fact goes without saying. To make it clear, we will give an elucidation of the causes which were back of this gross deception and the means employed in carrying it out. Alright, and that's chapter 2. Chapter 3, you can see, is explaining more of the struggle between Rome and Arya, right? And understanding that, history doesn't just all revolve around Rome and Persia and the Greeks, right? But they're, even in the conventional history that we're taught, the Phoenicians play a very, very prominent role. But we're never really given any context for the Phoenicians. It's one of those many things where they say, we don't know a lot about them. They're kind of mysterious. What I've come to realize is that every time they told me that in history class, we don't know a lot about that, it's very mysterious, they're lying. They know all about it. They're just hiding it from you. We don't know about that. And it's the same thing with, physics and science. They're, we just don't know a lot about that. Yeah, you do. But if you put any focus on it, it would bring down your whole theory and your whole story of what's going on here. So, yeah, the Phoenicians, it was clear that the Irish had a very powerful seafaring capacity. They had, if not a navy, at least a very, very large, merchant trade fleet, and that they were all over the world trading and, producing things and introducing culture. And this makes the history of Egypt so much more easy and intuitive to understand when you realize that culture was brought to Egypt, the megalithic culture and the institutions that define it and the religious customs and the symbols came to it preformed from Ireland. And Mr. MACDARI sure makes a lot of claims, but he does have etymology to back it up, and as far as I can tell, this resonates with truth far more than anything I've ever read in school. And that's not just because I'm Irish, it's because it makes sense. I mean, it's very obvious to me that this is based in truth. If not 100% truth, it's based in truth, and that this information has been kept hidden. If you Google Conor MACDARI, there's no Wikipedia for him. There's nothing out there. This is just like one of those things that was written and it was fantastic and they just swept it under the rug. But anyway, that's part 7 today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. A little bit shorter, and we'll be continuing along this line in the future. Hope you're having a great day and a great week. Cheers.